Sir Fiennes, it is an honor to meet you, sir. And Matt, it's great to meet you as well.
Thanks. Thank you very much indeed. It's an honor to be on your program.
Thank you, sir. I want to kind of start from the beginning of what the initial drive was for you to go out and start exploring. Was it an initial curiosity? Was it you trying to learn more about yourself? Because I find when I myself am in the mountains, I am at, even though I'm at my physical, I'm pushing myself the hardest physically. And some people would say I'm in some pretty deplorable conditions. I'm actually the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Understood. No, I think when I wanted to make up my mind at the age of a teenager, all I wanted to do was what my dad had done during the Second World War. He'd been killed 4 months before I was born at the Battle of Alamein, and he was in command of a tank regiment, a Scottish tank regiment. And that is what, even though I'd never met him, of course, I was brought up by my mum on stories about Dad. And that's what I wanted to do. Like him, be colonel of this great Scottish tank regiment. And the trouble was that in his day with horses, he didn't have to be intelligent and have advanced school A levels, etc. And by then, there was a place in the UK, rather like your West Point in America, where you've got to go. It's called Sandhurst College. And you couldn't get into Sandhurst College without these things called A levels. And I went to a school called Eton, and they weren't very good at getting you your A levels. So my mother had to send me a special place where you were bound to get in. You know, they would let it pretty much anyone in. And that was dead easy, but I broke their record. I couldn't get in even there. So I was sent to a place in Aldershot, which is an army recruiting centre, and I passed their tests, which are mainly concerned with digging trenches in straight lines, not very complicated. And I spent 2 years with my father's regiment in Germany, opposite the Soviet forces who at that time were threatening to attack Western Europe. And that was an interesting 2 years, but it was practicing only tank retreating from the German border. Didn't practice advancing, which got boring. So when I decided to do something interesting, I heard about a regiment called the Special Air Service, or the SAS, and I put my name down and eventually got into them. And everything was going fine until I realized that I would never make colonel. At that point, aged about 21, I had to suddenly switch. And to answer your question, I got married at that time and we had to make money to make a living. And so we did the nearest thing possible to fighting the Soviet Union. And that was to do world expeditions to break existing world records of a physical and geographical nature. And that's what my wife and I started to do within the first year of marriage.
So it was like an expedition, kind of like how the space race was, but for expeditions to bring media attention to the UK instead of to Russia. Is that right? In a way?
Well, we decided that we break records, like I said. And the first one that came up was to do the first journey up the longest river in the world, the River Nile, Egypt, Sudan, and so on, 4,000 miles, never been done. So Ginny, my late wife of nearly 40 years, she decided we would go for doing the very first river. And the BBC at that time in England or Scotland, you only had four TV channels that you could look at. BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV One and Two. And therefore, to get on one of those things with an expedition, so many people in the United Kingdom would see it that they would sponsor you because you're getting lots of PR. That's the whole secret. You give the PR to the companies, they will give you equipment. So we did that expedition. It worked very well. We then did another one in 1972, just after we got married. And that was the first journey in British Columbia, you know, Canada, Western Canada. And that province of Canada had been formed 100 years earlier. And they were doing a centenary because they were discovered by Scotsmen at British Columbia. They wanted a Scottish group to do the first ever journey from the United States border to their northern Yukon border. They then changed it to do it from the Yukon border by 9 interlocking rough rivers all the way down through British Columbia to the United States border at Vancouver. My regiment was asked to provide the Scotsman. They asked me if in return for lending us a Land Rover, BER, I later discovered that meant beyond economical repair, but better than nothing. And 3 Scotsmen joined up from the regiment, and it took us 8 months to get from border down to the United States border. But we succeeded eventually. Nobody had been through the Moran Canyon and the Fraser River before alive. 2 French canoeists had actually been through and come out, but they were both dead.
I think also you got to, like, your question is a good one, because I think you realize that RAN really spanned what an explorer, this sort of changing era of exploration, when it was, the sort of guys, the sort of historic guys that you can draw a line to, like Scott and Shackleton, that connect in our minds with RAN. But RAN was also part of a very much a new wave of people who realized that you needed to get sponsorship and you needed to get money. You needed to work hard and graft hard and have no money for ages. And just, that kind of idea of, I always say, if you could sort of bottle him up, you'd have something really potent. He's got this sort of drive that he still has now that I'm sure he had then, just there to sort of get the next expedition. And Ginny, who was also, I know, I never met her, but I know she was like that too, just from watching the archive. They worked so hard and tirelessly to sort of get the sponsors. So whilst we all now look at expeditions and think that's how they work, RAN was really, I think, at the start of that, the vanguard of that whole period,
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're seeing a whole new generation of explorers coming up, and a lot of it is being done through private funding instead of through government funding. Like I spoke with Mingma David Sherpa recently, and he worked with Nims Dai, on the 14 peaks in the Himalayas and the difficulties, that they went through just to get the funding. And that's one thing I'm even curious about myself is the funding aspect of it all, because you can't even go out unless you secure those funds. Matt, one thing that I really enjoyed about this was that you decided to make it more of a portrait than a biography. So you didn't let him stick on script. You're like, all right, let's kind of reveal the layer and get behind the man. Why was that so important for you to be able to go through that or to showcase that aspect of it?
Sure. I just knew from the moment I met him and had heard about him actually before I met him, I knew there was sort of wonderful sort of character there that wouldn't come through if it was just a straight list of all the things that he did. That's this, and I didn't want it to be just a film for explorers. I wanted it to be a story for everybody that we could all relate to, because love and loss and friendship are things that we all felt, and I know Ran has felt it too. So as well as him achieving these extraordinary things, I also knew there was an extraordinary character. The way he, he used his car, and the idea of sort of man in the Mondeo, the guy who sleeps in his car to get the next expedition away. That was this sort of extraordinary character. It wasn't this Sir Ranulph Wickham Fiennes guy. It was actually just Ran, and somebody I got to know really well as a friend through the film. And so that friendship to me was really important, and the trust was really important. And so I think, in answer to your question, it could never have been another way for me. I knew that I wasn't just going to make a film that was a list of things. I guess partly because if you listed everything, the film would be about 12 hours long. You'd run out of time. So, it was sort of joking aside, it helped me focus which expeditions I wanted in the film, because each expedition had to tell me something different about his personality and his character, rather than it just being, wasn't that amazing and wasn't that difficult or wasn't that extraordinary. It needed to be, wasn't that extraordinary, but what does it tell us about, like you say, the portrait, who he is? What color of the portrait or texture does this give us? That was the important thing.
Sir Ran, how did you prepare yourself mentally for some of these expeditions? I don't know if you do any type of like meditation or breathing techniques or anything like that, because when I go out, a lot of times, I don't know, there's a driving force behind me. I don't know what it is, but it's like another beast within me that comes out. But when I'm not on the mountain and preparing, I am doing, meditation techniques and stuff like that to help push me forward. I was wondering if you do anything yourself as well.
Not really specifically, but before the big expeditions, because you're working to get sponsors. So for one single expedition, it took us 7 years unpaid, getting 1,900 sponsors together, including a 1.8 million pound ship not new, 40 years old Norwegian ship. And we decided we would do the first journey around Earth. No human being had ever done it before without flying 1 meter of the 52,000-mile journey. And it took 7 years to prepare for and 3 years to actually do. So 10 years of our lives to do one expedition, never been done again. We were the only people who've ever been vertically around Earth, reaching the first people to both poles en route to that. And that took that much out of our lives, sort of thing. So to answer your question, it's very difficult because we're doing lots and lots of hard office work on telephones, persuading people to give us the potential, and every now and again taking time to do a little bit of exercise to be fit, so that when the people are actually trying to do it, they don't find all that office time has been misspent, as it were. And we're choosing people very carefully. We wanted, with myself, to have 2 other people who would be going around the world like that without flying. And the 2 people came out of 800 applicants. We chose out of 800 just 2 people. And the main key that we're looking for was the word motivation.
Absolutely. And I think also, from what I saw, and also the stuff, in terms of, it was so much around life, it wasn't separated in the way that, expeditions were and are his life. It wasn't like you suddenly prepared. So Ginny, I feel Ginny being there as well was part of that. It's not meditation as such, but it's like, this is the person who supports you. I think that's the other thing that was there, big support. And you know what it's like for anything you want to do in your life. If you've got some support behind you, that helps you get away and take the first step, I think.
I mean, you show, I don't think any of these expeditions would have been possible without Ginny, for sure. The amount of logistical and support and, just support overall that she helped. Sir Fiennes, do you believe that we will still be able to actually walk to the North Pole? Because I know you had collapsed through the ice. I think it was back like in 2000. I've been reading articles that the ice cap's not even going to be there, in the next decade. Are we missing that window to actually be able to hike to the North Pole, or has it already passed?
No, there is a possibility that the difference in going when we went and going now to the North Pole is you've got a hell of a lot more water. Mm-hmm. You've got a hell of a lot more Nilas, which is black, almost water, but still slightly frozen. You then got different type of stuff called, well, it's got different names, but basically it is grey ice. And you tread on it, your foot might go right through, even with a ski on it to lessen your weight. And you've got to be very good at recognizing which stuff, before you try crossing it, rope yourself up to one of the others. And if you keep doing that whenever it's dangerous, you'll never get the record pole that year because it takes too long. So you've got to get people who have become very good at taking risky crossings without doing lots of tying up anchor ropes and so on en route. So it becomes a specialist business. And in those days when we were doing it in the 1970s, there was no polar orbiting satellites. So there was no GPS or sat-nav or sat-phone. We were using what Scott and Shackleton used, for instance. So on my left wrist, I'd have a watch on local time, and on the other one, Greenwich time. Then having looked at both of them, I'd look up at the sun. Providing at midday I could see the sun, I could work out where we were in the same way that Shackleton did all those years ago. We weren't trying to be old-fashioned, just it hadn't changed by that time. By the 1990s in the Arctic, it was modern stuff with the GPS.
Yeah, when we were looking at the maps, I remember certainly looking back at the places he'd been, the ice extent was incredible because they mapped all the ice extent because they had the icebreakers. They had to come and get them out of the ice when they'd gone across the North Pole. And you see the maps that Anton Baring, who was in charge of all the shipping side of it, you see their maps in his ring binder, and you see, the ice extent is, it's like a massive change. It's sort of shrunk around the top of the planet. It's quite amazing the change. And even when we talked about it, sometimes you would say, oh, of course, I had to change from, sledges to canoes. It's kind of incredible that you just think Rand lived that life and it changed whilst he was still doing it.
Yeah, we had an aerospace company, British Aerospace, designed boats that could be used as sledges, whereas all those years we'd been sledging, which had slight waterborne capacity, the sledges, but not much, because there was only a few channels, narrow ones, to cross. But now we're talking about big areas of ocean.
What advice do you have for the next generation of explorers? Because we now do have the technology. I mean, one of the features I love the most is Google Earth. It's just having satellite imagery, being able to go in and being able to see the environment before going into it. But what advice do you have for the next generation of explorers?
Basically, go for it and realize that what we talk about explorers, means that you are exploring. And that means you're coming back with information geographically about the world, which nobody's ever had before. That is exploration. And we're talking about on one expedition when we went right the way around the world, from the edge to the pole was not exploration. It had been done partially before. When we reached a certain area, we had 900 miles of Antarctica, which is bigger than America. 900 miles area where nobody had been before. There was no map in the world showing any information about that huge area that we crossed. And because we had been trained to map things and to learn the depth underneath our feet, I won't go into all the details of the equipment, we were able to map the height of the route across the unknown area. So from then on, you could have a map of the world with something which gave you information about that unknown area, i.e. the heights. There was nothing else, no rocks coming through it. So we were genuinely exploring. So talk about explorers, the next generation of explorers, what they've got left basically is under the oceans and up in space, not on the earth. New areas, we killed that lot. Sorry, mate.
No, I know you got. I was thinking like maybe some of Antarctica might be left, but probably not. I don't know. Matt, what would you like for the audience to take away from after seeing this? Because like you said, I mean, I myself, I enjoy mountaineering. I enjoy the outdoors, but that is not necessarily who you made this for. You did make this for more the general public. So what do you hope the general public takes home after watching this?
I think I want them to take away, what an extraordinary guy Ran is, obviously, which I think comes through, but also just those ideas that you can be sort of extraordinary, whether you're out there doing stuff that's on paper extraordinary, climbing a mountain. You can also be extraordinary in your drive and determination to be sleeping in your car, doing whatever it takes, and facing the same challenges we all face. I think there's something kind of universal in Rand's appeal that can give us all the sense of inspiration that we all need. In whatever we do, we all need a bit of inspiration, don't we, to do something or take on the next challenge. And I think he has that in spades, and if we could bottle him up, it would be great. We can't.
And I believe Sir Fiennes showed us what the human potential is, because I think a lot of us put ourselves in a box and we believe we can only go so far, where truthfully we can go 3, 4, 5 times that if we just allow ourselves and put ourselves in uncomfortable environments and really, move forward. So,
yeah, inspiration, definitely.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you so much for being able to join me today. Sir Fiennes, it was an honor to meet you. And Matt, fantastic job on Explorer.
Thanks, man.
Thanks very much indeed. Cheers.
Take care. Bye. Cheers.